What's up, guys? Hunter here, back again with another review. Today I'm going to be talking about Squid Game Season 3. And yeah, we're just going to jump right into it. I was pretty disappointed by how the season went. I was a big fan of the first season, and I thought Season 2 was okay. I was really hoping that they were going to kind of be able to sell me on having this season and last season, because I thought Season 1 was already a good, complete story. I didn't really think they needed to have a Season 2 or 3. So I was really hoping this last season was going to, really wrap things up and prove that, it was good to have this 3-season arc that they decided to do with player 4, 5, 6. I was really disappointed. I did not like how they wrapped up a lot of these characters' storylines. Specifically, there's a lot of characters that I think die in really dumb ways. Like, they're sad, don't get me wrong, but they don't have the same effect that I think a lot of the Season 1 deaths do. It's just characters' decisions don't make a lot of sense to me. Specifically, stuff that happens with the mom and son duo and some other, main characters that stood out in Season 2. A lot of those deaths didn't work for me. I also don't like how they made 4, 5, 6 character at the beginning of this season. I mean, after, Season 2's ending, he's in a really dark place. Everything, his plan failed. He lost a lot of good people, especially his best friend. And he's really, depressed during this first half of the season, at least. And he started doing a lot of stuff that I think was out of character. Don't get me wrong. If you go through something like how he went through, obviously, you're going to be upset and depressed and going through all these different emotions. But he did some stuff that I really thought was out of his character that I know Season 1 of his character would never do. And so I was a little bit, put off. It was almost kind of hard to support him after some of the stuff he did in the very first couple of episodes in this season. But they did rope me back in on the second half. They kind of turned his character back around. He started to become the old character that we knew, actually trying to save these people. But it took a couple episodes to get there. But it was still, I thought it was a little bit out of character. And that's kind of what I think this season struggles with a lot, is I feel like it doesn't know what it wants to do with a lot of these characters. They also do something really weird with player 333, who is the GM coin guy. They give him a way bigger story in this season, and he becomes a more pivotal character. And they take him down a route that I was not expecting. Not that it didn't work for me. I actually think it made the later half of the season a little bit more entertaining, but it did feel a little bit out of character because it felt like they were setting his character up for something else in the Season 2, but he ends up becoming more one-dimensional and just goes down a completely different route that I didn't think his character was traditionally going. Like I said, not that it didn't work for me. I think where his character does end up going, it's fine and everything. It just kind of took me for a left turn. I'm trying not to give too many spoilers away here, but the detective storyline with the guy who's, his brother, who's the brother of the frontman, I just don't really understand why it's in the show. It doesn't really do anything, I think, that much. And it was really disappointing because every time it went to that part, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going on? I mean, are we going to actually get somewhere with these characters? I find the characters interesting. I find the detective interesting. I find the mob boss, who I think is great in his role and is really funny and adds some comedic relief to a lot of these scenes. I find those characters interesting and want to watch them, but it's hard because it feels like the storyline's literally not going anywhere. It's not adding to the overarching story that I feel like of the games taking place. And I kept waiting and waiting. Okay, so when is this going to connect? When are they going to get to a point where these stories come together? And they do somewhat, but not to the extent I was wanting or hoping for. And I felt like they could have done the show completely without that whole storyline. Didn't really make any sense. I feel like they could have just focused strictly on the games themselves. I will say the one thing I did like in this season and last season too that I found very interesting, and I thought it was something different that we didn't see in the first season, was following the female guard that's in this season. And I felt like she had really one of the only good storylines that wrapped up neatly, and I felt like it made sense for her and the other characters that were a part of it. I felt like it was already kind of unique to see, the POV of a guard in these games and kind of what they go through and their structure and their lifestyle. And I really was satisfied with what they did with her character, and I felt like it made a lot of sense. It felt like the most consistent storyline throughout this whole season, to be honest. And the overall ending of the games and like where it goes with the front man and player 456, and it doesn't end on a happy note without saying too much. And I think that's fine. I mean, that is kind of the tone of the show and everything, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of a resolution. You can have a dark ending. That's fine. I don't see a problem with that in this type of show, but I feel like they needed to wrap up a lot more. I still had so many questions, like the same questions I had at the end of season 1. I feel like we all still have at the end of this season. And it felt like they were trying to wrap up 456's story and the frontman's story without giving too much away of this whole universe and how the games work and everything. It felt like they were just trying to wrap those characters up rather than explain anything else really to us. And it felt more like a setup to a potential another spinoff that they kind of hint to in the last couple of scenes of the show, which I think is fine. I want to see where that goes. But if that doesn't go anywhere and that spinoff isn't really connected to this story at all, I feel like that would be a big mistake, and it would kind of make season 2 and season 3 kind of even more pointless than I think they already are, because I think season 1 was great the way it was. They could have ended it there. It didn't need to go into all of this, especially since they didn't even answer any of the other questions that we all really had from season 1 and wanted to see more about how the games are run and everything else surrounding this, organization. So I think they have an opportunity in this next show, if it eventually does get made, to really, acknowledge a lot of the questions we have and answer them and evolve this universe. And I think it would probably add more validation for having these last 2 seasons. But as it stands right now, I am pretty disappointed. I also got to say, on another note, there was a lot of things that kept taking me out of the season. For whatever reason, the show really wanted to use like CGI. I don't know if it has something to do with some of the laws with filming there and how they have certain cruelty laws that they have to abide by, and they can only do a certain amount of things with certain people. I don't think it's a spoiler. I'm just going to say it. But you kind of see it or hear it in the trailer. There is a baby in this season, and for whatever reason, they CGI'd the baby, which is fine, okay, but they kept showing her face, or her. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but they kept showing the face of the baby, and it's like the most CGI thing you'll ever see. It's really, really, really awful. And they kept going back and showing it and showing it and showing it for no reason. They could have just, showed the head of the baby. They didn't have to keep showing the face. And I was it just kept taking me out of the show a lot of times, and I was kind of laughing at scenes that I should have been laughing at because that's how bad the CGI was. And there was even another scene with a dog that's just as bad. It looks like it's straight out of a video game. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing a bunch of memes of that dog because it's all over the place on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. It's just, I don't know why they were using so much CGI, but whenever they did, it was the worst thing I've ever seen, and it kept taking me out of the show. Another thing that really did not work for me too is they have these VIPs back again in this season. And in the first season when they were introduced, they were very, cartoonish and very cringy. But they didn't have too much of a screen presence. They were kind of, only there for a couple minutes. And this last season, they definitely have more screen time, especially in the second half of this season. And whenever they're on screen, it's the most cringiest, terrible acting I've ever seen in a show. It's they went and just picked up some random Americans and British people off the street that have never acted before. It is truly awful. And it really took me out of a lot of those scenes that they're in. And when there's these intense parts where they're kind of watching over the games, I just couldn't take it seriously. I know they're supposed to be kind of cartoonish and these evil and misogynistic, rich people, but it was so bad. Like, they could have definitely done a little bit better of a job on casting these people, especially with how much they were kind of in the last couple of episodes. Like, I don't know what they were doing there. But that's going to be it for this review. I mean, like I said, I was very disappointed. I'm probably going to give it like a 6.5. The only reason I have it that high and not lower than a 6 is because I was very engaged in a lot of these episodes. It kept me watching. But like, I will say this season was definitely more entertaining than I thought season 2 was. I just didn't like where it ended up going with a lot of these characters throughout the middle and the end. And I had a lot of problems with the way they wrapped up a lot of these storylines. Anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking the time out to listen to this review. And if you have any other things you want me to review, or if you want to stay up to date on all the latest movies or TV shows, I'll be trying to post the reviews as soon as I can. So please subscribe, follow on whatever you're watching this on, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.